Yeah. He was a sportscaster for the Philadelphia Phillies for about 36 seasons, and he was the voice of NFL Films, which is a very popular program, kind of going over some big football moments. And so he did that for many years. He was also known for the people who didn't want to tune into the Super Bowl and to instead watch the Animal Planet version of the Super Bowl called the Puppy Bowl. He did the voiceover for the Puppy Bowl for many years. So yeah, broadcasting has been in my family. Also now my brother Todd broadcasts for for the Houston Astros. He was with the Tampa Rays for many years. He's now with the Houston Astros. His first year doing play-by-play with the Houston Astros, they won the World Series. So look at that. I was always interested in poker. I played games with my friends, and I looked at it as something that you could make money with, but I wasn't too sure if I could do it for a living. And I had a friend of mine who was actually one of the weaker players in the game drop out of school. We were in middle school at the time, and he said, "I'm going to play poker for a living." And I said, You're crazy. But sure enough, he put in his time, he studied really hard, and 12 months later, he was doing really well playing poker. And I'm like, "Hey man, teach me how to play." And by the time I was a freshman in college, I was playing full time. I was I was studying 30 hours a week and playing poker 50 hours a week and getting zero sleep. Right, so that's always been a big passion of mine. I never really viewed it as something that I wanted to do for a living. It's really tough in the music industry and in theater industry in general to really make that your primary living, but it's a different feeling singing opera or being in a musical or in a play, just kind of connecting with your emotions and really moving the audience in a different way than you can at a poker table or in a broadcast booth.
America is about to be sung here at Citizens Bank Park by Kane Kalas, the son of the great Harry Kalas. And there's Kane walking out to the field. He's got his white patent leather shoes on in honor of his dad. Folks, you want to sit down and enjoy this one, because Kane has a great gift, and his gift is a beautiful singing voice.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her. Whenever I get an opportunity, 2 years ago, I was in a semi-professional production of Les Miserables, and I played the role of Javert, which was a role that I had been wanting to play for a very long time, and I was so happy I finally got the opportunity to do that. So when those type of opportunities come up, at some point I'd love to play Jekyll and Jekyll and Hyde. I just love Frank Wildhorn as a composer, so if that ever comes up, or maybe Scarlet Pimpernel, I would love to do something like that, but it's pretty much, I gotta put it between the poker and the broadcasting and everything else that's going on. Well, I'd say my biggest poker achievement is simply my online results. For many years, I've now been I think this is the first year I'm considering myself a semi-professional poker player, or non-professional poker player, because now I've really moved into investing more than poker. But for the past 11 years, I've been, a professional poker player, and I think the thing I'm most proud of is just kind of doing it myself. Like I said, I did have a friend who we came up together, but it wasn't like I knew, the top players in the industry or something and got coached by them. And it was more kind of like figuring it out myself, starting from the bottom, and just basically had money saved up from birthdays and Christmases or whatever. I had a couple $100s, and I had to make it work with that. And fortunately I did. And so I think I'm most proud of just kind of starting from down here. And then, back when I was playing, though, when I first started, the games were pretty easy compared to now. Now if you log into PokerStars.com, you're going to be playing with a lot of sharks, and they're all competing for a couple of non-professional poker players' money at all stakes. Even at the lowest stakes. When I started at the lowest stakes, people were just trying to figure out, what hand beats what. So I was pretty fortunate I got in when I did. But yeah, I'm most proud of that. And then my biggest individual accomplishment would have to be coming in second in a WPT. It was worth $505,000. It was a nice feeling. I would have loved to come in first. Came in first in a couple of smaller ones, but my biggest score was that one. The commentary is something I've always been interested in my whole life. I studied communications and theater arts in college. I actually originally started vocal performance and communications, but it it became too difficult to learn all the languages and everything. And I'm like, you know what? I got to put vocal performance on hold if I'm going to play poker 50 hours a week. Theater was a little easier. So I always knew that broadcasting was going to be a part of my life. I was going to make time for it in a professional way, even if I was playing poker full time or now investing full time. And I'm very fortunate that I managed to get in an industry where I can enjoy broadcasting, but still enjoy playing and enjoy broadcasting a game that I love. Ooh, the first commentating job was actually I final tabled. There was an iPoker tournament, part of the iPop series. This must have been, I must have been 20 years old at the time, 21. So this must have been 2010. And they flew you out to Spain for the final table. This was the only online tournament that worked like this, where you make the final table of an online tournament, and then you go out to Spain to finish it in person live. And I busted the tournament, but then they said, hey, do you want to come in the broadcast booth? And I was broadcasting with a gentleman named Jesse May, who did some commentary. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. And that's really how I got my feet wet in the broadcasting. And then it wasn't until a couple years later when I started to do more and more broadcasting. After I kind of stopped playing online as much and started playing more live tournaments and started to get more recognition in the live tournament circuit. It's a really interesting phenomenon, the way it works in poker, where some of the best online players, like, you've never heard of them. Some of the best players in the world, you don't know what their names are. And it's funny, I kind of experienced this back when I was playing online. I was playing the highest stakes online. My second year playing poker for a living, or actually the very end of my first year playing poker for a living, I was playing Rail Heaven, which was the biggest game that ran online, and nobody knew me outside of that. It wasn't like you don't become a well-known poker player in the community until you have a couple of deep runs in some live tournaments and stuff like that. So it's interesting. It's kind of deceptive. There are a lot of players who either are playing online or who are playing in big private games who you've never heard of, who are very, very strong poker players. I guess it depends on the situation. If I go and play poker for a whole month without doing any commentary, then I'm probably itching to do some commentary. And if I'm doing commentary for a couple weeks straight without playing any hands, I'm like, man, I want to be at the table. So it's kind of, I like to keep a balance. All things in moderation. Randy and I actually made training videos for the same training website years ago. So he and I have known each other for a very long time. I think for 8 years. We've known each other, and that training site was Poker News Strategy, and it then became Poker Phenoms. We changed our name, and so he's always been a great guy to work with in general, a good friend of mine. So it's awesome to be back in the booth. I haven't really gotten to see him for a long time because he's been off in Australia and in Asia. So yeah, this is such a unique opportunity for me because normally the place I commentate most is Borgata, and normally you'll have a couple of very talented players at the final table, and I like to learn from them, but it's normally the same faces. It's normally, Joe McKeon is at the final table, Aaron Mermelstein's at the final table, so I've learned a lot from them, but now coming here in a setting with more kind of elite players in general, just kind of everybody in the field is a very top tier elite player, and seeing the way that all of them are playing against each other is really, really interesting to me, and I'm definitely taking some notes as I'm broadcasting. I haven't played too much poker in Europe, but I've done a lot of traveling around Europe for pleasure. Montenegro is just beautiful. I mean, I was not expecting it to be this amazing. My favorite places in Europe were, Monaco is really nice in the summer. Outside of the summer, it's not as nice. It's very expensive, obviously. And Italy, I've always had a soft spot in my heart for Italy, but now Montenegro has to be up there on the list. I mean, this is great. I want to keep broadcasting. I'm loving broadcasting poker, but I could see myself some point in the future pivoting to other sports as well. I mean, like we talked about, just kind of growing up at the ballpark with my father, and now my brother doing that in Houston. I kind of miss, being at the ballpark and, smelling the atmosphere, what it means to be there, and having the hot dogs and everything. I kind of miss that aspect of it as well, and I'm a huge fan, of course, of the MLB and also of the NFL, so I could see myself going down that route as well.